Good evening and welcome to another edition of All for United on what has been a news-filled week for United, hasn't it? Two wins, two massive stories coming out of Old Trafford. And me and Ben, hopefully Daz, are going to get into it. Daz will join us when he joins us. But Ben, how are we, buddy? You all right?
Good, yeah. Nice to, like you said, some positive news and positive games, which hasn't been the case over the last couple of months. So it's been nice, yeah.
Yeah, it's just nice to have a positive week, isn't it? Like you say, instead of losing games, and it's nice to come out of a week with a positive edge. So we obviously come off the back of last Sunday's game against Arsenal. We probably should have won that game. So I was sort of positive after it. Was a decent draw. Probably should have won it. And then we get that Radcliffe interview dropping on the Monday. I think we'll start off with just how did you think he come across?
Well, I've seen mixed perceptions from it online in terms of some people going one way, some people going the other way, but I thought he actually came across quite well. You always know he's going to speak well because he's a businessman, he's been doing it for years, he knows how to speak to media. But I thought some of the stuff he was actually saying was it highlighted some of the stuff that we already think about the Glazers. He can't exactly come out and say they're a bunch of whatevers, but you got the sense that he's not very happy with some of the decisions and some of the management team that's been in place previously. So I thought it was quite good.
Yeah, I think he said just enough, didn't he, about the Glazers without, as you say, without sort of putting the elbow in. Do you think he deserves a little bit of respect for that, coming out where other owners maybe would sort of shy away from that?
Yeah, I can't think of another owner in the Premier League that's done such an open interview, really. I think the Crystal Palace owner or chairman, he's done a couple like that. But yeah, it takes massive credit. And I think as well on Gary Neville's part, he's had a lot of criticism recently about not standing up for the club, the fans and all of that. But I think he actually did quite well in the interview as well. He pressed him on some bits and he didn't let him off the hook, which was good.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like a very uncomfortable interview, didn't it? Even the Neville one and the one he did with the BBC, it looked like he was quite uncomfortable in some parts. But some of the points he made, the point of we'll be out of money by Christmas 2025, I found that quite startling when you think of the amount of revenue that United make. For him to say we'll be out of money by 2025, I thought that was pretty big.
Yeah, it's stark, and I think he's dropped that in because of the criticism he's had. Obviously, all of these cuts, we've all got our own opinions on should they be doing it to certain areas, and the charity stuff doesn't sit well with a lot of people. But that's how bad it was, that United would be running out of cash, which then I think he said later on in the interview as well, which leads to more lending, higher debt, and then you're just in a cycle, aren't you, against the club.
Yeah, I mean, he said, didn't he, that in January, I think he said January last year, that he put in 300 mil, and that's gone already. I think we just hemorrhage cash, don't we, United, at the minute? Did it make you think differently about some of the cuts? And obviously, the staff lunches is obviously a massive sort of headline grabber with the media, about the cuts to Fergie's wages, about the cuts to the ex-pros. Did it make you think slightly different about those sort of things?
Yeah, I don't know what your feeling on it is, but I've always had the stance that I understand why they're making the cuts. I just think some of it has been badly timed and also badly communicated. It tends to come out via like the Telegraph or something like that, or they put this bland statement out. And I think I've always said, I understand why you're doing it, but come out and do an interview, which is done now. Come and explain the situation that we're in. Come and explain the numbers. It was a little bit worrying that Gary Neville suggested about putting Bruno and Maguire in a room and doing like a charity event, and that hadn't been either it hadn't been mentioned or disregarded it when it has. That was a little bit worrying because 40 grand between all of the players, they could all chip in a couple of grand to cover it. But yeah, ultimately, I think he said that to just highlight how deep of a mess we are in.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that, for me, it just kind of rang alarm bells that maybe he isn't as involved as maybe he should be, and he's kind of delegated it out to people who maybe aren't as clued up on it. I don't know.
I think that's the point though, as well, isn't it? This management team that he's put in place, he's essentially trusting them to do the job, and
Yeah.
he should only really be making like strategic decisions on, for example, a stadium or reinvesting funds or anything like that. He shouldn't really be sat there thinking, do we need to save money on ketchup or bits and bobs like that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why he's delegated a team to do those sort of things, isn't it? What did you make on his comments about Ten Hag and Ashworth? Obviously, we outlaid quite a lot of money getting rid of them. He said that they were mistakes. I thought it was quite interesting, his comments about Ashworth as well, where he said there was what did he say? There was a communication issue or a chemistry issue, I think he said. Yeah, I thought that was quite interesting that he wouldn't really go any deeper into that.
Yeah, that's the side of it. He held his hands up and kind of admitted they'd made a mistake on both of them, which is good to see that they're going to make mistakes. Just come out and say that you have made one.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have got a little bit more on the chemistry side of it, because the cost of hiring and sacking Ashworth, was it like 9 million or something like that?
Yeah.
If they just don't get along communication wise, 9 million's a lot of money to
Yeah.
drain because you can't talk to someone. So that it would have been good to get a bit more insight on that. But ultimately, he's come out and he said they made a mistake. We can move on from it.
Yeah, like you, I would have preferred just a little bit more about Ashworth thing, because you are just kind of going off what the press says, aren't you? Then that Ashworth wanted this, he wanted that, and it would have been nice for a little bit of clarity on that. Obviously, we've gone over the free lunches. What's your opinion on the free lunches? By the way, do you think it's as big an issue as it is? I think it's a little bit of a mountain out of a molehill, shall we say?
I said the same as what a lot of people have said, that 95% of businesses in the UK, you don't get a free dinner. So
no,
unfortunately, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's much more important jobs in the UK that don't get free lunches, and
yeah.
If they need to pay for their lunch, then it's tough, really. One of the comments that he made, I was quite surprised that wasn't picked up by the media or sort of large areas of the fans, about the women's team, and he basically said, if they make 650 million through the football side of the business, he's making 640 million through the men's team. So the men's team needs to be the focus. The men's team is kind of the bread and butter of the football club. What did you make of those comments? I know some people on this channel are very sort of pro women's football, that may have not took the comments great. What did you make of them?
Yeah, I probably lean slightly the other way. Not that I disregard the women's game, but I occupy too much of my time with the men's game that I can't focus any more on the women's game. But I want them to be successful, and I want United still to be the best in class, which I think he should look at it like that, in terms of, it might not be the priority. They might not bring in all of this money, but think how good it would look for media perception and just general, we should be best in class across the board. So this idea of the men's team supposedly getting the best of everything going forward, and then you not doing that with the women's team, that probably doesn't sit right with a lot of people. But I think there's been a lot of questions about the women's team since they came in. It seems that's the approach. And these cost-cutting exercises, if the women's team isn't bringing in a massive amount of money, we could see players moving on. We've seen quite a few players leave over the last couple of years, and I think we could see it again in the next coming years.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is just a sad fact of the men's team is the men's team, isn't it? Man United are the men's team, really. I love the quote that's kind of gone around that he met Maya Letizia, and he asked her if she was Matt Letizier's daughter, and she's obviously said no, she's not. It's just like a massive sort of drop ball from him there. But I love that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
he just kind of comes across as like your dopey old granddad. He's just coming out with like mad comments. I love that. But off the back of like the free lunches, and we're obviously cutting people's wages and stuff like that. The day after, they announced that we're going to be building a £2 billion, 100,000 seater stadium. Does that align well? If one day you're saying this, and then the other day £2 billion going out to build a new ground.
This is where what I said previously about timing. I think
Mm-hmm.
they sometimes don't think it through, because a business person, that's two different arms of the business. A brand new stadium that's going to generate you a load of money. You can lend money to pay for that. That's fine. But lending money to pay someone's dinner isn't quite the same thing. But to release it in that way the day after is just, it's the timing thing again, isn't it? And then it gets pounced on. I'm sure Roy Keane brought it up when he was on Stick to Football. Gary Lineker's brought it up on his podcast. That type of sentiment. How can you afford a £2 billion stadium? Well, we can't as a club without any lending. But it's easy to just filter it into these kind of headlines that make Ineos look even worse.
Yeah, I mean, it just opened itself up for that, didn't it? As soon as one day you're saying we can't afford to do this, and then it's £2 billion. I mean, and a sort of layman will look at that as like United are paying £2 billion for a stadium, and as you say, when you sort of break it down, I'd be interested to know what we are actually paying, like as a percentage of the club. I'd be interested to know what we're actually paying, because obviously it's a regeneration of the area. I know Keir Starmer said the government aren't going to be paying any money towards it. They're only really going to be funding the sort of regeneration of the area. So as you say, a majority of it will probably come from bank loans and sponsors, do you think? And investment that way?
I'd seen Bloomberg had put something out the other day saying that 1.5 billion of it had to be raised by finance, which would be bank or Ineos or whatever that might be. And then there was mention of equity sales as well. So whether that means Sir Jim's going to acquire some more of Glazers and put some more money in that way, or outside sources. I know there was mention of Amazon wanting to be involved in it and stuff like that. So whether there's like a share sale where they get 10% of the club if they put so much money in, whatever it is. But yeah, we definitely can't do it out of money in the bank. That's for sure. You'd
assume that the naming rights of the ground, as you say, Amazon, massive like worldwide brand. You'd assume that they're going to have, if they are wanting to be involved. Imagine that, like the Amazon Stadium or something. It just sounds shit, doesn't it?
Prime Stadium,
it just doesn't roll off the tongue. But would we get to see United games for free on Amazon? Every cloud and all that.
Nice.
What do you make of the design of it? I know it's thrown itself out there to rival fans saying it looks like a circus and. We're the clown sort of team. What do you make of it?
Again, it's very polarizing. I went straight on Twitter, and there was people, or X, there was people one way saying it's horrendous, other people the other way saying it's beautiful, it's great architecture and stuff like that. I don't mind it personally. I don't know whether that's because I'm slightly younger, and Old Trafford. When I look at Old Trafford, I don't think it's a beautiful building. It holds a lot of memories and tradition and all of that for the club. But I don't look at the bricks and mortar and say that's a beautiful stadium. So that's not the issue for me leaving Old Trafford. The webbing over the top looks unusual, but I knew straight away what it was for. And they've come out and they've said they calculated how many days it rains in Manchester, which feels like 360. But that was quite obvious that something like that, if you can get everyone still near the stadium, even when it's chucking it down, that's a massive benefit in Manchester. So, there's been a polarizing opinions, hasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, with that webbing and the cover, imagine after like a really big victory, all the fans underneath that. It'd be amazing if there's bars and restaurants and that in the near. It would just be amazing. I think you make quite a good point about Old Trafford. Are people a little bit sentimental about it just because, as you say, it holds, whether you've been there a million times, whether you've been there a couple of times, it just holds a lot of memories, doesn't it? And when you go in there, you can kind of feel just the history of the place. But as a building in sort of 2025 that we are in now, it's really dated, isn't it? There's not really much about it that you walk around and go, wow. Whereas if if you go to the Etihad, shall we say, it's like, Jesus, this is a really nice ground. Or you go to the Spurs ground, it's like, wow, this is a proper modern ground. And as Jim said in his interview, we are one of, if not the biggest team in the world. We deserve a stadium that reflects that, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. The Tottenham one was really the one that everyone kind of, as soon as that was opened, everyone was like, wow, this is kind of the next level of football stadium where we need to be. And there's a lot of people who say we don't want to Americanize the stadiums and stuff like that. And I don't think it's about that, because if you go into the vast majority of people who go into Old Trafford, if they're drinking before the game, they drink elsewhere, and then they go into Old Trafford 2 minutes before kickoff, because the drink in Old Trafford is horrendous.
Yeah.
The food, there's a couple of nice pies. That's about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the reality is, if you want to kind of cultivate a good atmosphere, get all of the youngsters kind of in the ground early and creating that atmosphere, put a bar outside that they can have a couple of pints at. That makes so much more sense to me. And that's kind of what Tottenham did with that massive long bar. And then the rest of the infrastructure, like you say, you walk around Old Trafford and you don't particularly think that's built well or anything like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, it's not so much about the building.
Yeah. I mean, Simon, I think, makes a good point, and I think as much as us United fans may want to sort of throw mud at City for what how they've sort of grown, I think City are a good model to look at. I mean, they've moved from Main Road, which was in itself a historical ground. It may not have the history that Old Trafford does, but it was a traditional football ground, and they've moved to the Etihad. But the Etihad campus now it's a great place. I mean, what they've done to the area, and I think if United can do that, obviously they're looking to do it on a slightly bigger scale. But if they can do that, it will be magic. I mean, as you say, if the bars are closed, if restaurants are closed, if shops are closed, everyone will be there. And I think that's only a good thing. Obviously, the negative of it is, as Andrew Wall puts in the comments, ticket prices will go up. I think that's just the nature of the beast, isn't it? That if we want this big stadium, they're going to have to find money for it somewhere. What do you make of that? I think ticket prices are due to go up to about £72. I've been seeing on Google. What do you make of that? Is it right that the fans burden that or take the sort of burden of the price?
It's not as egregious as the debt that the Glazers have brought in, because if the ticket prices were just increasing to pay off their debt, well, we're just paying to have the luxury of the Glazers, which is no luxury at all. If you have to pay an extra £6 on your ticket price to have a brand new stadium that is state of the art, I can kind of see a reasoning for that. I still think that's a little bit high. And when they went up to, or the percentage that went up to £66 earlier on in the season, Ratcliffe kind of palmed it off and said, well, that's similar to what Fulham pay. But that's just discounting the area of Manchester. Fulham's like one of the most affluent areas in the country. To be saying that we should be paying the same as that didn't sit right with me, to be honest. And it's becoming a very expensive day out. Whereas in the past, you could get a ticket for, when I was younger, you could get one for 20 odd quid under 21s. Yeah. And it's not too bad. But you're looking at, it's £100 day without doing much, which is a lot of money for a lot of people now. And that's the worry. If you're adding in 27,000 extra seats and bumping up the prices, are you actually going to fill the stadium?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, people say to me, why don't I go to Old Trafford as much now? And it is that thing of if you're taking your family with you, it becomes a couple of £100. Do you know what I mean? Before you even sit down to watch the match, really, with a bit of food, a bit of merch, and a bit of the tickets and stuff like that, and the travel, it becomes a couple of £100. I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle of it. If we want these big shiny things, do we need to take the price of it a little bit? I don't really know. Would be my honest answer. So am I right in thinking from what you've said that you're okay that we're moving? You think we should move?
Well, I'm conflicted. It's a bit like Trigger's broom, isn't it? Where you can keep stacking stuff on top of Old Trafford, and you could probably cram another 15,000 seats. It cost you £1 billion to put a new bit of paint and a few new doors and stuff in. But how long does that last? And then ultimately, are you getting the benefit from that? You're probably only benefiting from the seats. The one part of it moving away is kind of carrying over that atmosphere and tradition is the one worry. If they go too American with it and don't bring across some of the heritage, like someone said about Main Road, you lose that, don't you? West Ham have lost it. Tottenham have kind of lost it. It is what it is. Yeah, Arsenal from Highbury, I think that was similar early on. They seem to have managed to build up the atmosphere a little bit more because they're doing well on the pitch. But if you're not doing well on the pitch and you've got 100,000 seat stadium, you need something to fall back on.
Yeah, I mean the other way of looking at it is, I suppose, if we move, it will generate more money through investments and sponsors and all that, and then it can, in an ideal world, it can then get ploughed back into the team, and then you make new memories at the new place, don't you? I mean, just getting to Old Trafford and being at Old Trafford at the moment just feels really dated to me. Like, just around it just looks shit, and it just looks. So if they can make it look anything like these plans, then I'm all for it. To be fair, as Reactive says, and as I just said, like, we probably are one of the biggest clubs in the world, and the stadium needs to reflect that. It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're an away fan and you're coming to our ground and the rain's pissing on you and the food's shit, and it's just not Man United, is it? However sad it is, like you, though, I hope they take. They're obviously going to move the museum to the new part of the new part of the ground. I just hope they keep a little bit for Munich. I hope they keep like little bits. Do you know what I mean? Whether they're going to knock Old Trafford down or not, I haven't really seen what they're going to do with that, to be honest.
I think they're planning to knock it down.
We're staying there, aren't we? I believe.
Yeah, I think they'll knock it down afterwards, but they said it's going to take 12 months after building the new stadium to knock it down. So whatever happens with that.
Yeah,
seems like a lot of time to knock it down, but
yeah, I'd have liked to have kept it, to be honest. Maybe put the women in there or just use it for other events. But I think even that, like with the new ground, having England games up there, having like concerts, I think it will just bring more to the north. I think, as much as rival fans want to sort of dig us that we're spending £2 billion, I think it will do the north quite a lot of good. So that's Radcliffe. That's the stadium. Now we go on to the Europa League, and there's a few bits we need to talk ourselves through, I think. So obviously 1-1 from the first leg. The game starts quite slowly, I thought, and then Sociedad get a pen. I thought it was a little bit soft. I don't know, what did you make of that?
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit harsh on. It was De Ligt, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There was no intention. He'd obviously that Oyarzabal had just nipped round in front of him, and I know he had taken foot first, but feels a bit disingenuous for someone to just run across the front here, and then that's ultimately a penalty. But it felt like at that point, oh no, here we go again. So we've seen it so many times, haven't we? The game starts slow and then we concede.
It felt like it was going to be a really long night, but thankfully, from that point, I don't think Onana had much to do, did he? From that point, we obviously got another penalty. Well, we got our first penalty when Højlund got fouled. Soft, or did you think that was more of a penalty than the Sociedad one?
Probably similar levels, to be honest. That was a little bit behind, and I think it was Robbie Savage on commentary kind of criticising Højlund for not putting it away. But if you watch him, he was literally mid-fall when he hit the ball. There was no chance of that. But yeah, I felt like it was probably a penalty given the one that had just been given. Yeah,
I think he set a little bit of a precedent, didn't he, by giving that first one? He had to give that one, really. I thought our second penalty was a little bit lucky. I thought the Sociedad defender can maybe feel a little bit aggrieved by that second pen.
I think he wasn't he, by the looks of his reaction. It's one of them where it was quite a it looked quite a quick bit of movement. It was Dorgu, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's hard to judge, I think, who's kind of made the contact with who when it's that quick. But yeah, again, like you said, he's kind of set the standard for what's a penalty. And that's why we ended up with that many in the game.
Yeah. I mean, in real time, I thought it was a pen. I mean, I called for it as soon as it happened. But then you sort of slow it down, maybe a bit harsh. And I thought the red card was even harsher.
Yeah. It's I suppose by the letter of the law, you can say it's a red card. But given the state of the game and the position on the pitch as well, it felt quite high to be giving it as a red card. It wasn't as if, and it wasn't central either, was it really?
No.
That other defender probably had a chance to get round. Not complaining because it made it a lot easier. But yes, slightly soft, but a bit more European style of refereeing, I think, in terms of they set the precedent early on and then that's it.
Yeah, I mean, would the pens have been given in our league? I'm not sure the Dorgu one would have. And I'm not sure the red one would have. But as you say, in Europe, it's almost like a different rule book, isn't it? Because things that some real soft pens, like the one that Sociedad got in the first leg, that was a real soft pen that maybe you wouldn't have got in our league. So Bruno dispatches both of the penalties that he gets, and then he obviously gets a third goal. We must say this on every show. He's so good, isn't he, Bruno? I mean, he controlled that game, didn't he? Like, yeah, he's so good. And without him, we'd be fucked, wouldn't we, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, and it's just getting to that kind of peak as well now, where he does this kind of every season. He seems to have this run where it just gets better and better every single game. Obviously, we're going to talk about tonight's game as well.
Yeah,
it's just carrying the team. And there's a lot of people who kind of slag him off for throwing his arms about. Roy Keane said, why is he throwing his arms about, all this type of stuff? Roy Keane would be going red in the face with his team.
Yeah,
because it must be so frustrating to be as good as Bruno Fernandes and then look around and you've got Dalot to your right-hand side who can't pass it or whoever it might be. But yeah, luckily we can rely on Bruno.
Yeah. Just to start us here, what his comment says, congrats on 1 million. It's likes, isn't it, that you got on TikTok 1 million likes?
Yeah, that was
that's proper good, that is, man. Yeah, that's an achievement, that is. So well done, everybody. So yeah, we go on to the fourth goal. Højlund worked his arse off like the whole game, didn't he? And then he lays it back for Dalot, who again I thought had quite a good game, as all of them did. And I'll pick out a few of the standouts. What did you make of Højlund in that game? As I say, I thought he put a real shift in.
Yeah, you could kind of hear the crowd willing it in for him, wanting him to score a goal. And I think it was nice to see that he laid it off for Dalot, because I think he could have actually had a shot where he was. I know it was a tight angle, but he could have been frustrated and thought, I'm just going to smash this and see if it goes in. Which, on one hand, you could say he needs to have more shots. But I think it was nice that he actually laid it off, because it shows just a bit of calmness sticking to the system, even though it's not working for him. And his goals will come, as we've seen tonight. But he keeps grafting, he keeps doing what he needs to do, and the goals will follow.
I think that's what he needs in his game, and it sometimes. I think he just needs that little bit of calmness. I mean, there was a couple of moments in that Sociedad game that it broke to him, and he almost snatched at it like a little bit like a centre back would. He just tried to put his laces through it. Whereas if he was a little bit more sort of cultured with it, he may have got slightly better results. Aiden Heaven, obviously his full debut, his European debut. I thought it was proper good. Obviously, as you say, we'll go on to the Leicester game today. But just off that Sociedad game, he was so solid, wasn't he? For a lad of his age, so good.
So, like, as soon as Martinez went down injured, I thought we're really going to struggle getting the ball out of the back. But he came in and he looked so comfortable on the ball. I know I'd seen like a scout report when he actually joined saying that it looks more like a central midfielder on the ball. And I can see what they mean, because left foot and right foot, he just looked composed. And physically, he's got that recovery pace, hasn't it? We've seen a couple of times where he might have been out of position a couple of times, but he's managed to get back in because he's quick enough. And I was kind of thinking ahead to next season. If Martinez doesn't come back quite right, you've got Heaven on that left-hand side. You can have De Ligt in the middle. You can have Yoro on the other side. That's quite a competent back three from what we've seen. So, yeah, I was very happy with him.
Yeah, I mean, what did we pay for him? Was that $1 million and a half, something like that?
Yeah.
That may prove to be a real steal. I remember at the time when we got him, there was talk from like Ornstein and Romano that the reason he's kind of moved was the pathway into the first team. And no doubt the pathway has been slightly quicker than he probably would have imagined with the injuries to Martinez and that. But yeah, he's taking it with both hands, isn't it, at the moment? Dorgu, again, I thought was really good. A real danger and a real threat down that left-hand side. Again, is it too early to say that's a bit of a bargain? I don't know.
I think the one thing you can say about him is that he's an athlete. So we've said this quite a bit earlier on in the season, that we don't really have that to fall back on in terms of if we're not playing very well, we can run or battle our way. Where Dorgu's quite raw, and you can see on the ball he's still got quite a bit to learn, but he is just rapid and he is strong. So ultimately, if he's not playing very well, just rely on that for a bit. And that's kind of what he did in that game, because I thought on the ball he took a couple of wild shots and a couple of passes were mislaid and stuff like that. But ultimately, he just kept running up and down, and it sounds so simplistic, but that just provides you an outlet. And you could see Sociedad just were kind of knackered running after him all the time. I thought it was very solid.
Yeah, I think that's a madly impressive thing about him. He doesn't stop, does he? And he's by no means a small lad. He looks like a proper, like, chunky lad to knock off the ball. And he's got that Dallo and Mazraoui just don't have, do they? They don't have those qualities, I don't think.
If you could put Mazraoui in his body, you probably have the perfect fullback. But you can fall back on physicality, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, do you think? Obviously, we've missed out on Quenda now. He's obviously gone to Chelsea. That's all but sort of confirmed, isn't it? Do you think that'll be high on the list in the summer to get a right-sided Dorgu, for lack of him?
I saw a report from Romano that it's not, for whatever reason. So whether Amarin's got it in his mind that he's going to use Ahmad in that position, and then he's going to get a new attacking midfielder to play in the 10, maybe that's what he's thinking about. I think going back to what we've just said, we need just a bit more physicality in their positions. The Premier League relies quite a lot on turnovers and transition. If you don't have players who are quick enough to get back in, then you're going to be wide open, which we've seen a few times. So I think whoever we go out and get in that position or the 10 position, just get someone physical. Yeah.
I mean, you talk about physicality, talk about being good on the ball. It brings me to Josh Zirkzee, because I love him at the moment. I think he's really turning into a bit of a cult hero. I don't know if that too sort of sensationalist to say that. I don't know. Again, I thought it was quality on Thursday. Every time the ball got to him, it stuck with him. He was doing little flicks down the line to beat defenders. I think the only thing he needs to improve in his game is the numbers, be it assists, be it goals. If he can do that, I think we've got a real player there.
Yeah, I thought that was his best game the other night. He had kind of a mixture of everything. Looks like he's lost a couple of pounds as well, which is probably helping him. It looks a bit sharper. I think the one thing we need to be careful with on the numbers side is that he's probably going to be the one before the assist or the shot sometimes. So you see it the other night where he'll drop in, he'll play it to Garnacho, who will play it across. That's all come from Zirkzee, but he doesn't get the number for it, which is, I think, something we just need to kind of work on, because we've got Bruno who puts up 30, 40 goals and assists every single season. I don't think Zirkzee is ever going to get to that level, but I think he's massively is important to the team. You
Yeah.
see it tonight. We missed a little bit of that link play. So I'm so happy for him, because after that Newcastle game, I thought it could have got like really nasty.
Do you think that was almost like a blessing in disguise? Like in hindsight, has that almost been the making of him, that moment?
Yeah, and I think the next game was an away game, I think, and the fans were just constantly singing for him.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of just, that can either make you fall down and you leave Manchester United in the summer, or you kind of rise up, puff your chest out, and say, I'm actually a good footballer. And I think that's what's showing now. It's quite difficult to understand what he is, isn't he? Because when you look at him, you think he's not really a striker, he's not a midfielder, he's not a winger. What is he? And that can be quite difficult for fans to say, oh, he's not doing very well. But now you're starting to see some of the stuff he's good at, then that's when you can like really get behind him, and it becomes a cult hero because he's different.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Because I think when we bring him in from Bologna in the summer, we've kind of brought him in as a striker, haven't we? And then, as you say, when the numbers aren't there, the first reaction is to say, "Oh shit," and then you actually step back and you give him sort of 6 months or whatever to kind of grow into the team. We can see the qualities that he's got now. Do you see a player there that, I mean, I agree with you. I think he's a real important part of the team now. And I think when he wasn't on today, I think we did miss what he offers. We did miss him sort of holding the ball up and knitting it together. Do you see him being an important player, as in, if you were to name the 11 for next season, would Xerxes be at the 10? Or is he still not there yet as a sort of starter when everyone's fit?
For me, that I look at that 10 position as that's probably the most interchangeable position on the pitch. And I think it has to be done based on who you're playing. So you think if we're playing someone like a Liverpool or a City away, I think Xerxes could be quite good in terms of getting on the ball and playing that ball for the transition. But then other games where someone's a bit more compressed, he might not suit that type of game or whatever it might be. I think that's he could be very important for 25 games, but then you sit him out for the other games. I think that's how that number 10 position is going to be looked at, really.
Yeah, I think that's probably right, and that's why we need options, isn't it? We need like maybe a Mason Mount fit. We need Ahmad up there and options. I think Simon makes quite a good point here. He says as the changes will keep coming, given sort of 2 or 3 years, United will be back up there. I think that's something as a fan base we need to maybe sort of get our heads around, that what's happening now is kind of building for a couple of years' time instead of next season, and we're kind of in it for the long race sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to talking about the likes of Heaven and Dorgu. You look at them and you think they're not really experienced players. They're not going to fire us to the Champions League next year or whatever it might be. But when you think Yoro's a year older than Heaven, isn't he? So they're going to be 22, 23, 24 together. Dorgu's going to be whatever he'll be. You've got Kobe Mainu. There's quite a young core there. And I think that is building towards having a good team in 3 to 5 years rather than next season. I think next season might be a bit of turmoil yet again. A few teething problems, a few of the younger players in there. But hopefully just kind of building towards something. Yeah,
I agree. So we obviously put Sociedad away quite easy. Probably the best that we've played this season, would you say, that game?
Yeah, I said either that or Liverpool away.
Yeah, I mean, we created so many chances, didn't we? We just looked really comfortable.
We've seen games like that in the Europa League where we go and slap a team at home, and we haven't seen that for the last 12 to 18 months. So it's just nice to get a few goals, get a bit of confidence, and people actually playing well.
Yeah, I agree. It was real nice to see a nice, comfortable game. Lyon next. What do you think about that? Obviously, it should be slightly more difficult than Sociedad. I know they're not doing great in the French league, but it feels like that'll be a slightly harder test, maybe.
Yeah, and I think Amarin hit the nail on the head after the game. He said it'd be more of a physical challenge. I think Sociedad are quite weak. So we managed to dominate them, which against Leon, I don't think we'll be able to do that in terms of just imposing our physicality. So then it's going to come down to the system a little bit more. I still fancy us to beat them, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of building in a nice way now where April and May should be quite nice months for us. I know we've got some tricky fixtures mixed in there, but yeah, I'd like to think we can get past them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they've got
first, isn't it?
It's what, away first?
I think it's at their spot first. So if you go there and get even a draw, bring it back to Old Trafford and beat them there.
Yeah, I think that's quite important in European games, like we did in Spain. Even though we probably should have won that first leg, you kind of set it up nice, don't you, for the home leg? Yeah. And you're slightly in more control of it then. So Europa League tucked away nicely. Another sort of big tick for this week, and then we go to Leicester today. I'm not sure. It may have been the Sociedad game. Dalot 200 appearances for Man United. What's your thoughts on Dalot? I know from what I've seen online, he seems quite he seems to divide opinion quite a lot. What have you made of him over? I remember when Jose brought him in, I think his famous quote was he's going to be one of the best right backs or something in world football in the next however many years. It feels like he's become quite an important player for us.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because you look at him and you think he's probably got everything you need to be a very good fullback. He's 6'1" ish. He's quick. He's fairly strong. He's 2-footed. He can go up and down. It's just that concentration on both ends, I think, that lets him down a little bit. In terms of defensively, he can have a couple of lapses. And then going forward, I mean, the goal tonight, which he put on a plate for Bruno, I think was very good. But we don't see that enough. I don't know how many assists he's got this season. It feels like maybe 2 or 3. But that's not enough for a wing-back. Needs to be getting 7, 8, 9, 10 assists a season. So I think that's the bit that ultimately is going to let him down. And it'll mean that he's not going to be this starting right wing back in this system, but it's still good enough to have in the squad.
Do you think maybe after this summer, if we were to sign a right wing back, or if, as you say, maybe put Ahmad at right wing back, because obviously before Dorgu, Dalot would have probably gone to the left, wouldn't he? Do you think Dalot may find it difficult to get into the starting lineup and become a bit of a squad player?
Yeah, I feel like he'll get to that point where he's used in the cup games. He's used in, hopefully we're not in the Europa League at that point, but he'll used in them type of games. And then he's used as and when people need a rest. Like if we're playing Leicester in 5 years' time or 3 years' time, he can go over to the left and he can do a job in that game. That type of thing. He's still, ultimately, if he's happy playing 25, 30 games a season, he can comfortably get that as a squad player.
Do you think he's one that they may look to move on if we get a decent enough offer?
That's the other side of it, isn't it? If we've got someone coming up through the academy that can be the deputy squad player, and then you can go and get maybe 30, 40 million for a Dalot.
Yeah,
it's probably a deal they'll look at doing, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if it was last summer or in January. I keep seeing links with like Bayern Munich and I think Real Madrid even got thrown in at one point.
Yeah.
I think he'd actually do quite well in the German league with a team like Bayern.
Yeah.
Who are very much on the front foot. Because as you say, he seems to always have a little bit of a mistake in him, doesn't he? Be it sort of being a little bit lacklustre at the back or his decision making going forward. Because he gets himself into such good positions.
Yeah,
as you say, how he hasn't got sort of double figures in assists, I have no idea. I mean, there was that point in was it the Sociedad first game where it was almost wide open, wasn't it? And he could have just slid it through to Hoyland.
Yeah,
it's like fuck me. You just got to be better in those moments. But I think 200 appearances, I think it's a good milestone. So the game, I think it was a bit of a boring watch. I thought. I don't know. I was kind of on my phone for quite a bit of it. It never really felt like United were in much trouble. But Hoyland makes it 1-0 with quite a tidy finish. That'll do him the world of good, won't it? Do you think he may kick on now as he did last season?
Yeah, he went through like a little purple patch last season, didn't he? Where he got 8 in 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
And he looks more confident after his goal tonight. There was a couple of nice flicks which actually worked. I thought he'd messed up the chance for the goal, to be honest. Because I felt like he needed to get it on his left foot earlier, which he didn't do. But then obviously it was a good strike with his right, which we haven't really seen. So yeah, that hopefully does him the world of good, really.
I mean, that kind of, for me, feels a little bit more like his strengths, where the ball's almost like played through to him instead of it being sort of like pumped to him, like so he can use his pace, so he can sort of muscle defenders a little bit more. That feels a little bit more like his strengths to me. And I don't know if you've noticed it. The last few games we don't seem to be pumping it to him as much. So I don't know if that's changed. The sort of a tactical change there. I don't know. But I remember last year it might have been Galatasaray, and he scored a couple of goals, didn't he, in the Champions League?
Yeah.
And the pace he had on him when the ball was just put into space and he was there for him to attack. I think that's definitely one of his sort of more powerful sides of his game. As I say, the game was kind of like meandering on, and then Heaven took what looks like quite a bad knock. As we said earlier, Sociedad, he looked very good. That's a real kick in the teeth, ain't it, for him massively, because he's kind of starting to get his feet in the under the table sort of thing with the first team. That's going to hurt him, innit, I think.
Yeah, it was. It's difficult. It was so good in that first half as well, even tonight. But I haven't actually, because they didn't show the replay of what happened, and I haven't seen any reports. I feel like it's probably like an ankle, lower leg type of thing, judging from what actually happened. So my only hope is that it's like a sprain or something like that, and then it can get back before the end of the season. But yeah, it's a bit of a sickener, isn't it? And then you go into the rest of the game and you kind of, I don't know what you're like after an injury, but one like that, I'm sat there thinking, don't really want to watch this anymore, because it's kind of put off the momentum of the game, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean that was all I was thinking about really. After that, I was thinking like, is it a bad one? And because as the commentator said, he seemed to go down on it in an awkward angle. So I don't know if here we go. Andrew Walsh just put something in. He went out of the stadium with his foot in a brace, which could potentially be quite a long outlay for him.
That could be a good sign that he hasn't gone straight to hospital.
Yeah.
If he's got,
no doubt we'll hear about it during the international break, and hopefully, fingers crossed for the lad, he comes back before the end of the season and we can see him. I know Maguire is apparently quite close. I don't know, but I was just looking at it in that second half. We had Collier, Harry Amas obviously got on for his. Was that his debut? Possibly.
It was. Yeah.
I mean, Lindelof has done okay since he come in, but even there were moments today when Vardy was just outpowering him, and I think Oliver's very light. I mean, it's mad saying that, like an 18-year-old, it's that important to us at the moment. It's a crazy thing to say, but I think it may leave us quite light at the back if Heaven is out for quite a long time. But we'll see. Fingers crossed. Hopefully, Maguire can be back after the international break as well, and we can. I know Dorgu has finished his suspension, I think, as well now.
Yeah.
So that will obviously help. So we make it 2-0 through another player that needs goals, hasn't scored since November, I want to say. November, something like that. And I thought he took it quite well. Another assist for Bruno. Needed that goal, didn't he, Garner?
Yeah, he did. I think he's actually improved performance-wise over the last couple of weeks. They switched his side, so he went over onto the right-hand side. I can't remember which game it was. It was probably a month ago now. And he looks way better on that right-hand side because it forces him to do something different. If he's on that left-hand side, you know for a fact he's cutting inside and he's just going to hit it as hard as he can, which it's effective in certain points, but not every single time you get the ball. So they pushed him over onto that right-hand side, and I think that makes him just kind of link play a little bit more. He'll go around the outside a couple of times. And I think he's looked bright for the last couple of weeks, to be honest. So it's good for him to get a goal.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's probably deserved that goal, hasn't he, over the last few games? Yeah, like you say, he has played quite well. Similar question to Dalot for me in the summer. Do you see a long-term future with Garner? If there's a good offer, do you consider selling Garner?
It feels like one, if you got 60, 70 million,
Mhm.
you'd probably say, well, he doesn't quite fit the system.
Yeah.
And even if he plays well, he doesn't quite fit what Amorim wants. For 60, 70 million, which is virtually all profit, because I think we paid like 400 grand for him from Atletico. So PSR wise, he doesn't fit the system. He can be a bit of a pain in the ass sometimes, apparently. So that again would probably be a deal that they'd look at doing.
Yeah, I mean, there will definitely be teams looking at him. I just kind of think when everyone's fit, is there a place for him? I'm not sure. When for me, in my head, I think Mason Mount gets into that team over Garner when he's fit, just purely because of what Amorim will want from that 10. Not saying Garner's a bad player, but a little bit like Rashford. To be fair, I remember saying it when Rashford came, when Amorim came in. I'm not sure if Garner and Rashford are really going to do it in that system. We'll see. Then obviously we make it 3-0. Bruno, as you said, quality cutback from Dalot. It's just a quality finish, isn't it? But is that almost like expected now? I mean, when it comes to him, I thought it's just 3-0 this.
But that's like the ridiculous standard that is at, is that's an easy chance. That his ball striking, his passing, his ability to just finish everything, like that chance the other night where he got his hat-trick and he went through. I'm more confident about Bruno scoring that than I am Højlund or Zirkzee going through, because he's just so clean with everything he does. And he's got this weird knack of just popping up whenever you need him in the right place, right time, and he'll do something. Obviously, that's not a knack, is it? That's a skill that he's actually developed. He's become that player that is just, people call it clutch, but he just does it every single week. I'm buzzing with him at the minute. Yeah,
he makes it look so easy as well, doesn't he? Even that goal on Thursday. I mean, it wasn't a difficult goal. He almost just slides it in like really effortlessly. And like the goal today, the way he hits through it, it's just like, I've seen some comparisons, especially around when we were playing Arsenal. People trying to convince me that Odegaard is better than Bruno. And I don't know what planet that is a thing. Like, how can that even? I mean, I looked at Odegaard's stats earlier. In like 21 games, I think he's got 2 goals and 4 assists in the Premier League or something. That's shocking from a number 10 who's meant to be their playmaker. That's awful. And Bruno's got like double that.
I think it's like an image thing with Odegaard in terms of if you watch him as a footballer, you'd say he's very good because he passes it nicely. He's blonde hair. He runs about and does this and that. But because Bruno's a bit of he whinges and he moans and he's not always perfect. He'll ping it out of play and stuff like that. I think people watch that and think, oh, he's actually not that good. But ultimately, the bread and butter of football is putting it in the back of the net, and Bruno just does that and has done that since he came in the door.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this season, what are we now? 13th, 14th? He's still up there with the best ones in the league for goal involvement. It's nuts. Every season, he's churning out the same stats. It's crazy. We're 3-0. Excuse me. But for me, another sort of shining light, and it has been for the last it feels like a few months now. Matthias de Ligt at the back. He for me, he's just becoming like a brick wall at the back for me. Like, I love the way he's really he just throws himself in front of things, and you can see him like walking around, holding his elbow, holding his leg, like he's taking a few bumps. But I love that about him. I used to love Vidic when he back in the day. Just for that no nonsense sort of, he's going to put you in the stands with the ball sort of mentality. And And I think De Ligt's slowly becoming that for us. I think he's becoming a very, very important player for us.
Yeah. And I think there was a lot of kind of idea in the media that he wasn't actually doing that well a couple of months ago. But I think a lot of the issues were either other people in the defence or Onana. His actual issues with the goal. The only one that I can think where he's really been done was Liverpool away, where Gakpo cut inside and he slipped past him. That was the only one I can think of where I've actively said that De Ligt made a mistake there, to be honest. And then, like you said, we can fall back on the fact that he's going to keep playing, whether his head's cut open, he's broken his shoulder or anything like that. It might sound simplistic, but that's the character we've kind of been crying out for.
Yeah.
You look at Lindelof and you think, do you really want to be on Lindelof's team? No offense to him, but he's lightweight. He's not really going to put in a big tackle. Whereas De Ligt, he does it at Old Trafford, it feels like every single week.
Yeah.
He don't really need to sometimes, but he'll just go and clatter someone just to get the crowd going. So, yeah, I think it's been very good for, like you say, probably a couple of months now.
I mean, what did he cost? Was it 30 odd million or 40 million? I can't remember.
It was like 37.
Was it 37? Even that's a steal, man.
Yeah.
Because he's
only, is he 25, I think?
Yeah, just 25, I think.
Yeah. So he's got a long time in him as well.
Yeah, I think he'll be. I think he'll be our centre back for quite a while. I'm kind of one of these that I think the spine of the team I think is really important, and I think obviously Onana, there's issues there. We can all see that. Albeit he was okay today, didn't really have a huge amount to do. I think Leicester's first shot on target was like 85th minute or something. It's kind of like fighting off a dog that's got no teeth in it. Nothing's going to happen. But I think with De Ligt, I think Ugarte, I think he's good enough. I think if we can get a good striker, I think that will become a very good spine. I'd even put the captaincy on De Ligt, mate, or even the vice captaincy or something. I think he's just got that for a lad that's so young. I think he's got that sort of stature about him. I think he's quality good. He's really good, rather. Probably one of my favourite players actually at the minute. A comfortable win. I think, as I say, I think it takes us to sort of 12th or 13th or something. Is it too much to say we've turned the corner, do you think? We probably should have beat Fulham. We probably should have beat Arsenal. We beat Sociedad quite comfortably. We pushed Leicester aside. Are we getting this manager bounce a few months too late, or are we just having a good week?
I still don't trust him to keep doing it, is what I'll say. But I think we're incentivized now by the fact we are progressing in the Europa League. And that feels like a winnable competition.
Yeah.
So ultimately, we've got an international break now, haven't we, for a couple of weeks? And then we've got a league game and then the Europa again. So you're kind of bouncing into your fixtures. And if you want to keep doing well in the Europa, you're going to have to keep the momentum going in the league. So you're going to have to bring in a few new players and rest maybe a Casemiro, a Maguire if he needs it. But then you're hopefully going to be getting the likes of Mason Mount coming back and being fit, and other players that have been injured, kind of bringing them back. And then you've got a bigger squad to kind of draw down on because the last couple of weeks, we've had all of these young lads, granted, like Obi and stuff like that. It's great to see them playing, but can you rely on them in the Europa League? I don't think we should be.
Yeah, I think when it gets to the meat of the tournament, maybe semi-finals and final, you wouldn't want to put that on the young lads, would you?
No.
I think Daz is probably right. I think if I'm right in thinking, we've got Forest, City, and Newcastle possibly when we come back from international break around the sort of Lyon games. So on paper, it looks like quite a tricky run of fixtures. I mean, there's nothing in the league, is there, other than, as you say, keeping momentum for Europe. Do you think we're too far away to push for a Conference League spot or whatever it is? Do you think we're too far away?
Yeah, because if you look at them fixtures, the teams we're playing, Forest, Newcastle, City, they're all fighting for the top four.
Yeah.
And you could comfortably get slapped up by one of them. And then that kind of sets you back for another couple of weeks. Hopefully we don't.
Yeah.
Hopefully that spurs them on to come back and think we need to be on it, because these teams are very good. Maybe if you had like a Brentford at home or something like that, you could drop points in that. Whereas Newcastle, City, Forest, you're always going to have a tough game. So maybe it's either going to go one way or the other.
Yeah, I think Forest look very good to me at the moment. Just the way you got them playing, they just look a real threat. City at home, I'd probably be not confident, but I'd probably feel like we could probably give them a game. Newcastle away, I wouldn't fancy that at all. But whether them winning today, whether that'll put them on their holidays a little bit now, I don't know. But we'll see. I think it is very much all eggs in the Europa League basket, I think now, and trying to win that. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's it all covered, to be honest. But I think it has been a positive week, a week to go into the international break with a little bit of positivity. Do you think we're starting to see Amarin in this team now? I know it took a bit of time for the system, as people would say, the system to get sort of recognised and whatnot. Do you think we're starting to see what he wants from a United team now?
Yeah, I think both sides as well. He's seeing what certain players can and can't do. Obviously, he's pointed out that he moved Garnacho over to the other side. I love his post-match press conferences because he's so honest. He'll just come out and he'll say, "Oh well, early on I was asking Casemiro to go and press, whereas now Casemiro can sit where he needs to, and you'll send everyone else over that way." So I think he's working out some of the players. We're getting a couple of players in who suit the system a little bit more, and that's only going to benefit us. I think Daz is getting a bit giddy there, saying top six.
Top six,
if we got in the top half from the position we've been now, we'd be over the moon. I think every position you move up in the Prem, you get is it 8 million for each position?
I think so, yeah.
So yeah. Let's just try and get as high as we can, really.
Yeah, I think if we can finish top half, it's shit, but I'd probably take that, to be honest, from where we was. Yeah. I mean, if we win the next 3 games, then maybe we can start dreaming of finishing 8th or whatever. But I kind of see the league games now as we just literally take each game as it comes, sort of thing, because it doesn't feel like there's anything on the league. But yeah, we take it. It's nice to have a positive week for United. Where can people find you, Ben? And your 1 million likes, where can we find you?
Yeah, just over on TikTok. I think that's my name, Ben Wilson 217, or Ben on Football now. I had to change my name.
Is Ben on Football someone else?
Ben Talks Football.
Ben Talks Football.
So,
yeah.
I had to change it, unfortunately.
I'm sure I made a video the other week and tagged him in it by mistake, so I had to redo it. But yeah, if you're on TikTok or whatever, go over and check Ben out because he's a quality page. He knows his stuff. But yeah, a positive week for United on and off the pitch. There we say some good things to look forward to with the stadium. Hopefully Radcliffe can sort of start working the finances out so we can get some players in the summer. I'm not sure what's happening next week show-wise with it being international break. I might have a little bit of a break as well. It's my birthday, I think, weekend after next, so I might have a break and be back fully charged for Forest game, I think it is. But yeah, have a quality week. Enjoy United's positivity. Enjoy that the Scousers lost as well. You know, if you see a Scouser in the street, be sure to point and laugh. You know, we all love it when the Scousers lose. Put them back in their place for a little bit. But yeah, have a quality week, guys. Cheers for Ben for coming on. Always appreciate you being here. I think we got through the show okay between the two of us. I think we did okay there. Okay. But yeah, take it easy, guys, and I will catch you on the next one in a couple of weeks, probably. Take it easy. Take care.